The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, I have a long-time friend of the show, Chris Holm, who is the artist behind a lot of the artwork that I do for the show, and he comes on today, and we hop into it open conversation style, diving into the modern UFO phenomenon, some of our opinions on it. I definitely think that you guys will enjoy this episode. It's kind of along the same lines as the last few times that Chris has come on, where we get into some weird theories, ideas, all that fun stuff. But before we get into the episode, really exciting piece of news that I wanted to tell you guys, due to a conversation I had with Chris after recording this episode, actually, backed by popular demand, the Open Minds Media Discord community is back. And if you guys want to go and join that, I will put the link down in the show description so you guys can find it. But as of right now, it won't let me add it to the link tree just because it needs a certain amount of followers before it gives me that option. So let's hop into the group. Let's start up this community. Let's get it rolling again and get it to a point where I can make it so that it can be a public link, and then all of you guys will be able to access it a little bit easier. But for the time being, again, it is available down in the show description. And another piece of exciting news, I called into Monsters Among Us not too long ago to share my story of what happened to me at Northville Psychiatric Hospital, and it did get featured on a recent episode. So if anybody wants to go and check that out, it is season 19, episode 12. And with that, of course, I've noticed that there's been a little bit of an influx of new listeners. So for anybody that's new to the show and hasn't checked out the show before, if you guys enjoyed this show, I also do another show called Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. Unlike this show, that show, we deep dive into stuff. It's our own research. We have guests on over there. So I want to make sure that I promote that show a little bit because I feel like I've kind of staggered away from letting everybody know the good word about Bizarre Encounters and the deep dives that we do over there. So if you guys enjoy this show, don't forget to go and check that out. And for anybody that's been catching Bizarre Inquiries live on the Open Minds Media YouTube, the next episode of that will be on June 6th, which is actually next week, this coming week on Thursday. If you guys want to hop in and check it out, that'll be live at about 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you guys have any questions, clips, articles, any of that stuff you guys would like to submit for it, you guys can send those to me before then. And if not, then we will, of course, push it to the next show. But we'd love to see you guys pop into the chat, throw your guys' opinions, heckle us a little bit. It's always fun with you guys. So I'm definitely excited to hopefully see you guys there. And the next piece of news and updates is that I am still running the t-shirt giveaway with the survey. So if you guys don't mind going and filling out a 10-question survey, which goes back towards helping the show grow and improve, then you guys will be entered to win any t-shirt of your choice off of the Open Minds Media merch store. Once we hit 50, I will use a random number generator, and I will announce the winner once we hit that point. Currently, it is at about 5, so hopefully we can get those numbers up a bit. And again, if you guys want to do that, the link is available down in the show description. And part of that, of course, is that I still do have the 2 brand new shirt designs. I updated them a little bit so that they look a little bit better once they're printed. The first one is my Campfire Chillin' design, which is this fun design with a Sasquatch drinking a beer, hanging out with an alien, smoking a joint, opening up his third eye, hanging out near a bonfire. No text needed. I didn't think it was needed because I thought the design was fun all on its own. So definitely go and check that one out. And the other design I have for the more conspiratorial-minded individuals out there is my Break the Mind Control design. And with that, it has marionette hands with this cool hypnotic spiral behind it. If you guys haven't checked out either of those, make sure you guys do. And check out all of the other old designs that I've been putting out over there, because I don't feel like I promote any of those designs enough. And an update for the Patreon. The Patreon is still under construction. I'm currently waiting for a couple of features to open up as far as the merch store goes. I had to switch to the new merch store, as I mentioned a few months ago. Way better quality than Teespring. The shirt quality is better. The design quality is better. Everything is completely better about the website. But unfortunately, we have to wait for some of the stuff to catch up with it. And one of those things is the ability to give out specific promo codes for the Patreon members. It has a little option where it says that it's coming soon, but it hasn't actually been released yet, so I'm waiting on that, unfortunately. And I was trying to unveil a little bit more for the Patreon last week, but unfortunately I had food poisoning and it knocked me out for about a week, even with the aftermath. So I'm back. I am ready to gear all this stuff up and hopefully keep growing and expanding the show as we keep growing into 2025 and we start hitting the a little bit heavier season as far as podcasts go. And just one last thing before we get into the show. If anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can also call or text the hotline 313-364-1551. And if you guys didn't catch that, it is available down in the show description. And for anybody that wants to catch the show live, I usually post the schedules the beginning of every week on Monday, but just about every night at about 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you guys will be able to catch the show live on the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. And if you guys want to get notified when that happens, make sure that when you guys subscribe to the channel, you guys hit the little bell notification up in the corner, and then anytime we go live, you guys will get a notification for it. And every single thing that I mention or will mention throughout the show is all available in the link tree, which is also available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome back to the show for the first time in far too long, the artist behind half of the artwork that I have going for the podcast, and also the podcaster behind Conspire Theory Podcast, and also a friend of the show, been a friend of the show since the beginning. Please welcome to the show, Chris Holm.
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, I run Conspire Theory Podcast. I do like a lot of the t-shirt designs here, and you'll just see I'm pretty much all over the place. So it's been a good fun time. It's great to finally come back around. We've been trying to get this going for quite some time, and here we are.
Yeah, I think the first time you were on the show was under 100 when it was just you by yourself. And then it was like episode 140 or 150 something. We got into like a round table with Jamie J talking about UFO abduction. Mm-hmm. So yeah, dude, this is episode 323. So yeah, it's been way too long, dude.
Yeah, I know. I always love you and Orin have pretty much turned this into a good, fine oiled machine. And I love it. I love tuning in when I can.
Well, man, we appreciate it.
The shows here and there.
We definitely appreciate it, man, because it's one of those things, I'm sure you get it with your show, too. It's like you don't really hear the other side. It's like you see everything, you know that people are listening, but you don't get the feedback. Like, I try to do, like, a survey and stuff, and I've only had a handful of people respond to it. Like, it's really hard to get the feedback, dude, but it's always appreciated, but always kind of like, you never know quite how to take it, like, in a positive way, of course, but, you know, since you don't hear it often, you're kind of like, thank you.
Well, I mean, there's like, you know, there's always that you know, positive feedback, and then there's the negative stuff, and it's like, you know, it's there seems to be this pullback loop of, you know, of where we're held to this standard, but then at the same time, it's like, well, I never said I was, you know, we never said we were Woolward and Bernstein if we're ever criticized on our interview skills or our show format, you know, but at the same time, that's like, well, then should you be doing it at all? It's like, you know, and it gets that sort of circular logic of like, you know what, you know, people do improve, and in order to improve, they have to do it. You have to practice it. It takes practice to get good at anything. I mean, when I was first doing my artwork, and I don't claim I'm great or anything, but I wouldn't get as good as I did if I didn't have to slog through, all the feedback and criticisms that I had, which, I eventually built on and came back stronger. And that's the thing, is that we take our licks and then we keep going. It's that's sort of what you have to do in these sort of scenes. And I mean, it is interesting at the same time, yeah, you're going to get your naysayers that are going to say, you suck, and then rage quit on you. And then it's like, well, yeah, I'll take into consideration what I can grow from and build on. But, I still love doing this stuff, and I'm going to keep going,
That's kind of where I'm at with it, man. Like when you get like the crappy comments from people, usually the way that I see it is that if it's somebody that's actually doing like a podcast, for example, usually they're not that malicious, like they've been there before, they don't want to talk down on somebody else's show unless they're just that malicious person. But more often than not, you get these internet trolls and stuff, and they're usually people that can't do it. Even with art, with anything, it's like you have this group of people where they get mad because they can't do something that they want to do. So to make themselves feel better, they just try to crap on what everybody else is doing. And it's like, at the end of the day, dude, it's like art, podcasting, whatever. It's all just a means of expression, a means of entertaining yourself, hopefully entertaining others. So it's like, if you don't like it, just turn the other way and just go find something else that you like. Like, there's no reason to sit there and talk down about somebody's skills unless like you're angry because you can't do them, or there's something else going on in your head. Because I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, dude, most people running a podcast, there are the people that have the big studios, there's all that, but majority of us, man, it's like we're all just normal people at home who just happen to pick up a microphone one day, and after years of experience, you kind of start learning your radio voice, you kind of start learning how to piece your stuff together, and it's all about growth, man, like you said. And you'll never actually learn unless you're actually doing it and in the middle of it, because you could sit there and learn in books all day, and it's like it doesn't actually do anything until you're practically doing it and you're actually like doing it. Because at least how I am with the learning, man, it's like I can read stuff in a book, but I don't actually like connect it until I start actually using it in practice. So it's like, here's this podcast manual about how to do everything, but I won't actually remember any of that until that issue falls, and then I have to look it up, and then here I am again, and then I've done it in practice, and now I remember how to do it and fix it any other time. Like, I got to work like that. It's a learning curve, man.
Yeah. And the thing is, some people do start from the top. And it's like, they do have this bravado and weight behind them. But at the same time, there is such a thing as sometimes a bad interview or a bad show you can have a bad episode every now and then. It's not everything is going to be batting 1,000 every time. But aside from that, we're still here. I don't think we're going to be going anywhere. But at the same time, there's not really anyone chopping out our bits at the moment. So it's just a thing that we all deal with in here and there. And I, we're gonna, have our fun and enjoy it. And I do enjoy it. I enjoy the community and all the various communities and spheres that we're in. In some spheres, I can talk about some issues, and then in some others, I really can't talk because no one has a frame of reference what I'm talking about. And that comes into the thing where it gets into like, everybody, they like to stare down at that, and it's like, well, I'm not in my circle, so it's I'm gonna want to, where else am I going to go to talk about this topic and these issues, and I think that's pretty interesting. But we got keep going on. So, what would you like to talk about? Because it's been a minute. We got to get caught up. I'm pretty sure the listeners, new ones have come on and covering like familiar topics and stuff that we've talked about. I love talking about. I could talk your ear off about the alien abduction phenomenon.
Well, I guess that is probably a pretty good spot to start. But again, since it's been a hot minute since that you've been on the show, I know that diving into some alien stuff is definitely part of your podcast. So, if you want to kind of enlighten the listeners as to what exactly got you into the UFO phenomenon, and then we can start actually discussing the phenomenon.
Sure thing. I've always been interested in the alien abduction stuff since I was a kid. I used to watch this show. It was Canadian television. It was on the Sci-Fi Network. It was a show called Sightings, and it was so good, and I enjoyed it so much. So I was like, I love their alien abduction phenomenons. And at the time, the general consensus was if you're abducted by aliens, they're usually crawling through your windows. That was always the frame where, you have your open window and someone's sleeping, and then, in the window above them, there's a gray peering in on them and stuff, and they seem to have like whatever window type it is, they're always able to open it up and crawl in, which is creepy and scary, and it's an unsettling visual. But and it's like since then, for decades, I've been so interested in the alien abduction more. And then when I started getting into podcasting, actually talking about this stuff, I'm always interested in the experiencer stories. And I guess I sort of see these aliens like similar to how some people would see like characters in movies and stuff. Along the lines of like, all these grays have a certain culture and stuff like this, all the different types that they have. And I'm just so fascinated by it all. Recently, I've been part of a project where I got to illustrate a manual, compendium of alien races. I've brought a couple with me. Some of them will be familiar that people have seen if they've seen my prior entry. And I'm working now currently on volume 2. Volume 1 has been done. There's been a little bit of hang up on some of the other end, but as far as what I've had to do to contribute to the project has been finished and submitted in. And I just have to wait for the rest of the machine to go, because as with publishing and anything, it's so much of it is hurry up and wait.
You got to meet this deadline so that we can wait 6 months.
That's exactly it. And they've run into some hangups on their end, which that's not my part of the business that I'm involved with. That's not what I'm involved with. So I really can't talk on it, but I will say that, now the balls are rolling and eventually it'll get it down there. And I am happy to be working on the second set of illustrations for volume 2. So hopefully when it does come out, I'll be a little bit more ahead of the curve, so to speak.
Is this, just out of curiosity, is it through a publisher or is this independently published by somebody and you're doing the artwork for them?
This is an independent project. So it's pretty much a guy doing it himself with whatever staff that he can get to help him. It's a gentleman called R. Keith Andrews. He's a regular on SOR Radio with Dave Scott. And Dave Scott is pretty much like the Canadian George Norrie. People like to call him that. But he's a fun show. It's a good fun show, and I really enjoy that. And he's like a very positive, very positive guest. I mean, a very positive host as far as doing all this stuff. He gets into the woo stuff, and he's unapologetic about it. And it sort of leans into the thing where we have a lot of the. Now the big conversation right now is disclosure. And I'm not quite a fan of what I see going on. I just see a lot of, boastering and people are like Lou Elizondo. I'm very critical of that guy and Jeremy Corbell. I'm very critical of them, but they're of course the front and stage establishment superstars of this movement. And, and I see everybody, doting on them, and it just kind of makes me roll my eyes.
It's funny. I was talking about this with Orin recently, that we've gotten to a point now where it's like, everybody wanted this mass disclosure from the government, but now that they're actually starting to release stuff, nobody wants to believe it. And I think that we've gotten to the point now where either the water is so muddied or we're just so brainwashed by this stuff now that they could just start dropping diehard facts like, yeah, we've been doing stuff with the aliens since this year. Oh, yeah, we've had some alien bodies since this year. And everybody that's in the community is going to be like, all right, I don't believe it. And everybody else can be like, all right, I'm not paying attention to this. And the government's just sitting back laughing like, haha, we've broken them to the point now where it's like we can just do whatever we want. And they're just like, I'm not going to believe it anyways. Like, they could have this perfect video of like a gray walking out of an army base and they release it on the news from the government to the general public, and everybody's going to say, all right, that's from the government. I don't believe shit. There's something to this. This isn't a real alien. And again, they're just sitting back laughing like, that is a literal gray. Have fun, everybody.
And I don't think I understand how we've assigned this sort of this authoritativeness to the government because, of course, they're the government. Yeah, they are the ultimate authority. But it's this sort of appeal to authority that we use to validate ourselves and our claims. But at the same time, the way the mechanism works, I don't believe that we're going to ever get what we want out of it. But because of that, that's not going to stop people from, climbing onto that and trying to give us hope, and stuff like this. I mean, how many times has Lou Elizondo been exposed, showing, not fake, not so much, I don't want to say hoax, but misrepresenting the information that he has. And
he always feels like he's fishing. Like he's trying to see what other people know. He's like, well, I can't give that information, but like, what do you guys know?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that he's shown has been, exposed as it's not what it is, like a reflection of like a chandelier reflection in a hotel window is not a mothership and stuff like this. It's remarkable. The skeptics, of course, they just push. They're like, well, of course, this and that and the other things. But the thing is, to my original point, is that we're not going to get the disclosure that we want, because if the government does see something, they're not going to tell us because it violates the capabilities of whatever current technology that they have. And they need to keep that stuff secret for national security reasons. So it's not that if they have a picture of a UFO, they have to keep it under wraps, not because it's a picture of a UFO, but because of what they took that picture with. They can't disclose what that is. They can't disclose those capabilities, because then that gets into, it sort of gets into, like, it exposes information, combat information or whatever, to our adversaries and stuff like that. So it's sort of a national security thing. I get it. And since then, I've sort of like, I have this sort of opinion that I really don't think that we're going to get from the government what we want. What I want is, I've heard Melinda Leslie say, people don't want disclosure, they want confirmation. And that's sort of what I want. I want to, know about the grays and stuff, if there are any. And at this point, the culture has sort of evolved on our end, that now it's like the whatever the phenomenon is, there's always one step ahead of whatever the current technology or consensus is. Like how I talk about, my how I've observed the escalation of the phenomenon, how it first started that, the aliens, they were from Venus, then they were from Mars, then they're from this star outside of Alpha Centauri, and now they're from a universe like over, and now they're from another dimension entirely. It's like, it's always escalating. It's like the more we learn, the farther away they're from.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. But in the meantime, don't forget to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook. And don't forget to check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok. I'd love to hear from you guys, so feel free to leave a comment or spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show. And also, weirdly enough, it's like with the newer theories on it, it's almost like the closer they become, because we've always been talking about this, like, oh, they're from another planet, they're from this. But it seems like the majority of the people that are really diving into this stuff are talking about this whole, like, interdimensional, other dimensional, or this even like underground or underwater concept, that it's weird that we've gotten so far away with it now that we're starting to like pull back and we're like, yep, they're underneath our feet, they're in the water, they're in here, which, I mean, logically would definitely make sense if you take into consideration, like, if these things are abducting people, doing this type of research, it's not like, if you're doing some type of off-world research or, off-continent research, that you're going to be, going home every single night. Like, typically you'd stay wherever you're doing this research at. So, I mean, no matter where these things are coming from, like, the whole base concept, this whole underwater base concept definitely makes sense. But like we're coming back around to, like, it seems like it's kind of starting to come a little bit from the government and from these whistleblowers from the government. So it's like, all right, is this just trickled out information? Like, is this muddying the waters, or are they literally throwing out real information and just laughing in our faces at this point? Like, you never quite know which direction to go with any of this stuff. But, it's one of those things that it's more plausible that these things exist than don't exist. Like, there's no way that we're the only thing that exists here. And it's just a matter of, again, science catching up with this stuff. But, while we're trying to catch up with these things, they're so far advanced past us that we can't assume that they're not going to keep advancing way significantly farther past us, because as we've seen with our own technology, it's like as it progresses, it starts getting to this faster and faster point. So once they took off and just started creating technology, like, there's no way that we're ever going to potentially catch up with these things. I mean, even if we do start becoming a way more advanced civilization, again, these things have, significant more time on top of that, on top of us, or maybe even they had something where, they didn't hold the information from their previous societies. So maybe they aren't as old as us, but, they have the ability to use some of these old world technology, so to speak, that we never had the knowledge to be able to do because we just basically resorted back to, I guess there's a million different theories on it, but the possibility of them just never having that disconnection with the past and actually being able to continue progress, because if we didn't lose all these giant libraries, we didn't lose all of these significant things throughout history as far as knowledge goes, I mean, who knows where we could potentially be.
Yeah, I do believe that if it wasn't for our own, I guess, industrial checks and balances, that we could have, flying cars and, super cities and everything is super clean and wonderful. We don't need the aliens for that. We could do that on our own. We could save ourselves, type of thing. But at the same time, with the alien stuff, I do think it is interesting how there is sort of a new push that maybe we're misinterpreting, what has always been here as aliens. Like, some people there's like I think a push by some people to construe the aliens as demons, and there is some like push. Well, maybe the aliens, maybe what we thought were what we now describe as fairies, maybe those were misinterpreted as aliens, because we all talk about how these little people were sort of, how they had all these features that sort of make them reminiscent of what we now interpret as a gray. And that, I kind of like that. That is an interesting take on it, as an interesting perspective.
Even the time slip phenomenon that goes with the Fae, just to throw that in there, I mean, that's always a weird connecting tie too. Yes, yeah,
the time slip stuff. And I think some people are interpreting, ghosts like, well, what if some hauntings are actually, time slips, but they're not our time slips, they're someone else's time slips. Because, we all hear about the stories of places being haunted. And of course, I think there's somewhere some people have wrapped around, we're like, well, this place was always haunted. And then the teams, they get like echoes of what they think is a haunting or something of that nature. And it's sort of like they're like, was that what are they someone else's haunting? Like, is there like going to be like another team 20 years from now coming in and recording stuff, and it's just going to be the psychic imprint of whatever they were doing, shuffling around and being recorded in the future? Like it sort of gets in sort of, I guess it's sort of like stone tape theory plus, type of thing that I think is sort of getting into it, that I think some people are probably trying to piece together right now.
I mean, that'd be kind of a strange thing to think about, that, if the whole stone tape theory concept, that trauma ends up being recorded, if somebody's having these like abduction type experiences, like the whole concept that could potentially become like an unintelligent haunting and just keep existing within that area. But I mean, even on the flip side of the UFO thing, one thing that I've been talking about for a while is that, at least with the UFO phenomenon, you have to consider the fact that there probably is some part of this whole phenomenon that is human. And I mean, if you take that into consideration, like the whole trauma aspect, like on Earth and creating these locations definitely would kind of fall into play. But, I've broken this apart on a Bizarre Encounters episode, but started kind of connecting, like, when we started doing all this psychedelic research and when we started doing all of this like mind control research, which kind of fell into this UFO phenomenon stuff, which fell into all these UFO abduction cases with specific lines where people say that they swear that they saw something wearing a mask, or they saw something wearing like some type of doctor outfit. And I've always kind of wondered if it's some continuation of some of like the Nazi experiments that were happening where, after the Jehovah Convention, you weren't able to do this type of research anymore. So you had to try to hide it underneath a facade. So what not a better facade than the UFO abduction phenomenon? And I mean, I'm not saying that it's definitely not something that's happening, but if it is something that's happening, what not a better way to try to do your research than to try to slide under the radar with this thing? I mean, even when it comes to like UFOs, for example, like if there's a UFO that comes flying through an area and everybody's like, oh, there's a UFO sighting, what not a better spot to be able to test your advanced technology than to fly it right behind that UFO, because then everybody's going to group those things together. It's like, you kind of just ride under the wave and take advantage of the opportunity as you have it.
Yeah. I'm sure that a lot of, I understand that's one of your favorite theories that you like to latch on to. And I do believe that there is something there as far as government, doing underhanded, stuff like that. Cause like the MK Ultra stuff and other government programs that we have seen evidence of that. So to believe that it's still going on under another name, that's totally understandable to have that perspective. And as far as a lot of what we see as far as technology that's experimental technology being used and flown under the facade of it's alien spaceships. We'll let people think that our test craft are alien spaceships, so that way our adversaries don't know where we are capability wise with our stuff. That I mean, I can totally understand that those smoke and mirrors being in play. And that's probably why so many people have had frustrations trying to get information about stuff, because they start running into like a lot of compartmentalization. And so far, everybody has sort of done this sort of we've sort of like figured out like how to perfectly compartmentalize stuff where people can disclose, officially everything that they quote unquote know, but everything else, like the real juicy details that we want, well, those are in a, we've disclosed all the public stuff, but everything is in a private locker hidden away someplace.
As they say in these hearings, I can't talk about that currently. I can't talk about that on paper. All the stuff you want to hear, I can't talk about that. Which, I mean, you got to question the information if they're allowed to share it in the first place, because any whistleblower, it's like you got to get approved to be able to speak on this information. So whatever party they're working for, they're still going to take out the pieces that are going to imply them,
Yeah, it's a lot of smoke. Yeah, like I said, smoke and mirrors and stuff like that. That's why I feel like these hearings are just, it's for us who want to know, it's a waste of time. For everybody who's I just feel like they're just glorified B-roll footage to be licensed out to documentary firms. I'm not getting what I want, and whenever these guys do, come out, they're paraded around, and every single documentary that they're in is just a rehash of all the stuff that we've seen before, and then finally something new from this guy, and then he's like, oh, I can't talk about it because of my NDA or whatever, and yet these guys are touted as whistleblowers when they're not really. I don't know that they're really taking any risk. I mean, right now we're saying, well, yeah, they're taking tons of risks, financially, and their families, and the evidence of that is a bunch of mean tweets, which okay, they're at risk of getting mean tweets, I guess, from people like me and all that stuff. So I don't know. I just like I said earlier, I'm just not getting what I want. I'm not satisfied. So that's why I sort of, I do turn to the experiences and stuff like this, because at least I'm getting some kind of, I'm getting something. I'm getting satisfied, even if, I understand like a lot of the experiencer stuff in itself is also highly problematic and in most cases very unlikely. I'm finding myself entertained. And I know that for some people that might not be the answer that they want, but also, I can understand because I'm not getting the answer that I want. So it's sort of, I'll just talk to whoever, will talk about what it is. And because of that, because there is that demand there, I can understand a lot of people stepping up and being fraudulent and outright hoaxing and stuff of that nature. Even if they are, as we seem, good-natured people, we see that a lot with the super soldiers, and we see that a lot with, alien abduction phenomena, where sometimes people will escalate, where I do believe some people do have genuine weird experiences, because I've had some. And people take that and then they turn that into a career. And it's like, well, I have to keep pulling a rabbit out of a hat. So if I can't, my original experience isn't enough, then I guess I got to start making stuff up. I think that's what happened to Stan Romanek. He probably had a few genuine experiences, and then he sort of fell into the sod of the limelight and started manufacturing stuff. And of course, it also doesn't help that he probably is a genuine creepo. So that sort of became a thing. And then he got locked away and stuff like this. Before I was on the fence, I was like, oh man, maybe he got set up. Then I watched the which has been memory hold, was the J3, I think it was either J2 or J3 extraordinary Stan Romanek story documentary. And I watched that and I loved it because you could walk away either believing he's a genuine experiencer or that he's like a total fraud wacko. And he's talking about, beating up super secret agents with a bike chain and stuff like this, this frumpy little guy. And then he'll, make references, like totally creepy references. And it's like, oh, okay, I think maybe this guy is guilty of what they're accusing him of, and unfortunately that piece of media has been memory hold because of because he, apparently got himself in trouble. And I know that we like to get ourselves, all conspiracy type, like, oh, was he planted? Even I believe that for a time. But, sometimes things just happen that way. And it's really unfortunate.
Dude, it's one of those things, too, that there is a huge market for alien stories, for sci-fi stories. Like, rather than creating this false story that completely dampens the entire research and phenomenon as a whole, like, just create some type of fictional story. I mean, then you can make it what it is to begin with. I mean, it's definitely okay to have an experience and then be inspired to write sci-fi stories. Because, I mean, like you write about what you know about. So I think that's what people fall victim to sometimes too, is that, maybe they have a creative type mind and they have an experience. Then after they have an experience, then they like create these other scenarios in their head. And maybe they kind of get to a point where they're almost like lost within their own head and they can't differentiate what's real and what's not. But again, if you separate it, again, there's a huge market, probably a bigger market for fictional sci-fi stories than there are for, people honestly doing this type of like research. So if you're really trying to make money for this stuff and make money off of a story, like literally just create it as an actual story. Like, I don't get why people have to completely ruin the phenomenon with this type of stuff, unless it kind of falls into like the ghost hunter idea that, once you get rolling on it, it's kind of hard to stop once that becomes your main source of income. Because, a lot of these like ghost hunting shows, like, I don't know if all of them necessarily got to that point just because there are these greedy, sold out people. Like, as messed up as it sounds, like, once you've dedicated your life to like, all right, this is what I'm doing now. I am a documentarist, I'm going around, I'm doing these ghost documentaries, I'm trying to figure out all this stuff. But then once you have the people that are trying to actually pay for this to happen, say, all right, we need more stuff to happen. We need more stuff to happen. You're in a contract, you're stuck. And now it's like, half the community hates you and the other half are just watching you for entertainment. And I definitely think that there are, again, people that fall into that and know full well what they're doing. But on the other side, it's like, I definitely think some people kind of get trapped into that. And it's kind of the same with the UFO stuff. It's just, you get trapped. And then once people are too far down, it's like they can't back up now and say, oh yeah, this was a false story. I just needed something, to throw out to somebody, because otherwise, I got people back here that are chirping at me that I need to create the next documentary, to create the next episode or whatever, or the publisher saying I need to create a new book or something,
Yeah.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
Yeah, a lot of people do in this phenomenon, just to the nature of the beast, paint themselves into a corner. I think some people believe that that's what happened to Whitley Strieber, that he painted himself into a corner, and now he's, ebbing and flowing whatever it was to change whatever narrative he has. Before he believed this, and then they're this, and then they're this. And then some people say, well, no, there was always the root of it being actually this the entire time. And it's like, well, he sort of like shotgun so many details out there that I guess it's easy for him to write it around and pull it around to whatever he needs it to be. And I'm very, but then again, I'm also very biased and critical of Whitley Strieber because I watch his interviews and I get frustrated because he's such a presence and a big name that he can pretty much get away with anything. He'll do a lot of the thing where he'll be asked a question and then it'll be related to a specific topic, and then he'll just ramble about whatever he feels like talking about. and as a an audience member, that gets me just frustrated.
It's like listening to a politician talk. It's like you ask them a direct question and they'll give you every other dance around other option answer that there is possible besides actually answering that question. Or they'll just answer your question with another question towards you, or like a rhetorical question, and it gets absolutely nowhere. Like they know what they're doing. They're talking in circles because I'm not trying to make claims for Whitley Strieber, but there's a lot of people that they're just...
Yeah, I just used him as an example. This isn't, bashing of anything that, I've experienced the same thing, especially at live events. I've experienced the same thing with like Daryl Sims, and I know he's a beloved individual in the community, where I'll ask him a direct question and then he'll ramble about his television show or something, and then I'll re-ask the question and then he'll talk about, his book or something of that nature. And it's frustrating and it's, but I get it. And that's sort of, my take on it is that, and I guess that's sort of why I entered the field myself, is so that way I could ask these sort of questions of these people in a nice controlled environment. And sometimes, you can hop the fence as many fences as you like. You're not going to get closer to your goal, unfortunately. And that's just the frustration, but it's also the allure that keeps us going and trying, because again, we want to know, because we know like weird shit happens, and sometimes it's like, I want an answer, and until then, you can't blame us for speculating and stuff like this nature. And of course, some of it is like, is the technology keeping up or something of that nature? And some people think that, well, like with all the ghost hunting stuff, it's like they have all this equipment and stuff, and it's like, do they even know what they're doing with it all? That's like, I have all these expensive, ghost detecting stuff and doodads and doohickeys. And then the most efficient tool on the market right now is little cat balls that light up whenever they get vibrated.
Or old radios. The ones with the switch on them that you can go through, you can scan through radio channels. Because it's like, you can't trust the new technology because it's all hooked up to Blu-ray, Wi-Fi, whatever. And it's like, I need something that's not connected to something that can have an algorithm or something thrown into it. Even if you have like a device, how easy is it to set an algorithm in it where it just picks whatever and makes you feel like you're getting something when you're not? It's all just like a placebo effect. But I'm not saying that there's not actual good equipment out there. I'm just saying that, like, I don't think we've developed it yet. Like, I've been talking about this idea of like a thermometer, but like the opposite, where it can pick up cold signatures and it'll make the shape of like cold signatures. Like if we could develop some technology like that, where it's not just like a darker blue pocket, but it actually will like show off as like a brighter color and differentiate from other places around it, then, maybe we can get some solid evidence of the paranormal once we start getting these cold shapes in like the shapes of people and stuff. But like, I think it's a matter of like, it's just now starting to get taken semi-seriously. So like the technology for amateur researchers hasn't caught up to, what could be behind the scenes. And I've talked about the whole conspiracy of the paranormal forever, that I think that the government and the controlling powers know a lot more about this paranormal realm that they lead off to, which is why they kind of just let people like, oh yeah, ghosts, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like, we've always talk about this like transferring of consciousness. Like, you see this through all these occult circles, all of this stuff. And I think the whole like paranormal realm is a way in to be able to do that. So they just let people believe what they want with it when they know that there's something to it that's a little bit more scientific. And I think a lot of this magic and occult stuff it's just a matter of catching up with the science, and then it's not magic anymore. It's something that we can repeat and redo multiple times, but certain information gets pulled back from the general public because, you know, whatever the controlling powers reason might be, whether it's good or bad, who knows, but assumably bad considering that we were on a conspiracy show. But
yeah, I mean, and you know, like, our technology is constantly evolving. I mean, look at our cell phones. I mean, 50 years ago, these things would be absolutely magic.
I mean, it is a black mirror.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think someone in the chat are talking about Bill Cooper, who is an interesting individual. It's funny how some of these guys are like purposefully, it seems like they're purposefully set up, and in some kind set up to fail as a cautionary tale. Like, we have Richard Doty, who is, you know, an avid disinformation agent. And some would say that Lou Elizondo is in the same camp. How he's just, you know, our modern day Richard Doty, where he you know, Richard Doty pretty much bragged and laughed about, you know, making a guy kill himself because he was just so overwhelmed with what he thought was, you know, genuine UFO experiences. And it was just him, you know, being messed with by the government, like the government officially sanctioning, you know, messing with this guy because he was capturing like secret, or what was supposed to be, you know, secret transmissions on his local equipment, you know, and instead of just correcting it, you know, the action, they just indulged it and use that to create fodder to muddy the waters when we come in and look at it. And it is, I do consider that very interesting.
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things that they'll try to like incite people to do certain things, and they'll just kind of like trickle in some information to see if people pick up on it. Like, you see this a lot with this, with like a lot of these like quote terrorist attacks or like mass shootings and stuff, that there's always some type of like government connection to this type of stuff. So I kind of wonder if it kind of ends up being the same with a lot of this like UFO stuff, that, you know, if they see somebody that, you know, maybe is a little bit awkward, a little bit doesn't get along with people, like they seem like they need something to like make themselves theirs. If they'll just like take that person, start to manipulate them, make them think that they're having like experiences, and then use them as a ploy to let out information that they want out or control information that they want out, where, you know, if you're looking at it from that logic, it's like some of these people that you're considering like a shill, or these experiencers that you might not believe fully, you know, they may not even be aware of what's actually going on with them, which is throwing back to what I was kind of saying about like the human aspect to this phenomenon. Like, you know, the mind control aspect of it is just way too abundant for there not to be some type of interest from the government. You know, even people talking about their experiences with like the whole astral projection, or almost like their consciousness being abducted and, you know, their body not actually leaving the location. Like, you know, the US government's done enough research with this type of stuff to they're going to have an interest in that. If that's happening, it's either them or they're going to be like, all right, why are these guys so much significantly more advanced past us? And how can we figure out how to do it just like they're able to do it?
Yeah, and that gets into what I was alluding to earlier, is the escalation of the phenomenon, how they go from crawling into our windows now to peeking into our souls directly. You know, before it was like directly like, hey, we'll crawl into a window or come in through a door or something, and now they just materialize at the bedside. You know, they just phase through the walls now, and it's that's the escalation that I like to pay attention to, which is why I think it is important to preserve our history regarding these events. And because of that, you'll notice the patterns that come up. Like, in my lifetime, this has been the third big disclosure movement that's been framed. I mean, there was one in the 90s. There was one in, I think, before Lou Elizondo, there was there was Dr. Stephen Greer. And I can understand, some people are very critical of him, I'm critical of him as well. I'm starting to think he's starting to turn into a chimpanzee with all the chemicals he's putting into his body because he's getting this simian look. But the thing is that
he's a hybrid.
Yeah,
they've been injecting him with the green goo.
That's why when I see this song and dance of Disclosure here, I can't help but roll my eyes because I've seen it before. It's for me, it's old news, and unfortunately, and it's very hard for me to get excited. But at the same time, when I do see people get excited, it does fill me with hope. Because when you get to be an old man, you tell people about, hey, there's a minefield, and then they say, oh, there's not, or I know what I'm doing, and then they walk into the minefield and get exploded, and you're just sitting there. And then the next person comes up and says, oh, what happened to that guy? And it's like, well, I told him there was a minefield there and he got exploded. So it's as you get older and more seasoned, you do see sort of these patterns coming. And I can understand that's why, I can't help but be so cynical about this stuff. But I do try to when I do see people optimistic about it, I do try to, encourage that they look into it because, I can't, it's like I can't do the work for you, but at least try to be somewhat of a guiding force or offer some guidance or lineage that they can look into and let them know what it is that they're getting into. Because I remember a couple of young podcasters, they were really getting into the core good stuff, and I was like, yeah, you guys might want to be a little careful there. And then it turns out, and then a couple months later, they're like, "Oh yeah, we totally went down the wrong rabbit hole on that one. That guy was, he was totally crazy and a fraud and all this stuff." And it's it's that sort of cautionary. It's like it's what comes with age is experience, and seeing all this stuff, and then seeing all these people getting into these things for the first time. It is interesting, somewhat amusing. And sometimes we're not, as the old fogies, we're not going to be listened to. I mean, sometimes the kid has to touch the hot pan to know, even though you tell them you're going to get burned, don't touch that, and then they touch it and they get burned, and they're like, sometimes people in this community have to learn stuff the hard way, and it's unfortunate, but so long as, but we'll always be there as a guiding force, saying, yeah, I told you so.
Yeah, you always end up staying back and saying, don't trust the gatekeepers. Like, you got to do the research on the ground, like talking to all the people that have had the experiences and everything, because as soon as you start getting into the UFO stuff, it goes down to conspiracies, it starts getting into modern day society, all the manipulation of society, mind control, all this type of stuff. And then you stand back and you look at the phenomenon, and you have like the 90s where everybody's like, all right, show me the bodies. They have the alien autopsy video, they have all this stuff coming out. There was definitely focus on UFOs, but it was all about where are the bodies. Now we've gotten to this point where we're not even asking questions about the bodies anymore. Everybody's like, where are the UFOs? How is the technology working? Like, it seems like it's a control that it was like, all right, here's aliens. These are where these ships are coming from, because that fit the agenda back in the 90s when they were, I mean, again, depending on which way you're trying to view it, like if they were trying to use advanced technology, they're trying to cover it under the facade. They're saying, all right, here's the bodies, look over here. The ships, don't worry about those right now. And now we've gotten to a point now where it's like, it's almost like a controlled narrative that they're like, all right, don't look or think about what's actually flying it. Just think about the ship. It's almost like we're getting to a point where either one, they're going to say, oh, it's been us the whole time. Oops, it was never even these weird people piloting them to begin with. Or on the flip side, they're going to be like, all right, well, here's a little component, here's a little component, we trickle fed it to you. So now you have the alien image, and now you have the UFO image, and now here you are. You didn't get all the information at once, because if we would have shown you the images of their faces, and would have shown you their technology, how it works, and the mind-bending aspect of how it seems like these things literally have to use telepathic abilities to control these ships, all your brains would have exploded. You guys wouldn't have been able to handle it. Got to do little portions at a time. Here's the phenomenon. Where are the bodies? Here's the UFOs. That's where we're at currently. Or, they like to call them new names now. So it's not UFOs no more. UAPs.
Yeah, I get it. And I do find the current conversation about the UFOs themselves interesting, because a lot of people, they always like to say that, these the Greys and stuff, they always say that they were drones, and now that 3D printing has become prominent, we're like, well, what if the UFOs are the living being, and the Greys themselves are 3D printed by the UFO to engage in whatever XYZ? Because if you'll notice, whatever the encounter is, there's always just enough Greys to take care of it every time. Whenever people get abducted or something, there's always that extra Grey who needs to hold your legs when people are kicking and screaming as they're dragged into the UFOs, or at least when they used to drag them in. And now that they're being astral projected into the UFOs instead. And it's that steady escalation and stuff like this. And I can't help but, find that so appealing, is that I think with the questions and what was it? Not Get Out, but the Nope, the movie Nope.
Yeah, where the UFOs were actually alive.
Yeah, the UFO was alive, and it was sort of an entity, and that was such an interesting mechanic presented in that story, and I do think that is quite interesting, and it does, I think, fill a lot of probable holes in stories that we probably would have seen in previous encounters. And of course, that sort of that it presents the idea, but of course the execution is that the UFO was sort of always this feral sort of entity that would do it did turn it into a slasher, but it did present an interesting idea for the rest of the community to chew on and sort of inspire conversation that I think would have been there before. And because of that, I love that. I love that so much.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or one of your favorite cryptids or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. And t-shirts now for the low price of just $15.68 plus shipping. And now let's get back into it. See, it's one of those things, too, that I think that there's all these weird little, like, sci-fi concepts that are either trickled into the phenomenon or it comes from the phenomenon, so it gets trickled in sci-fi. It's kind of like the chicken or the egg concept, because even with the, I guess, self-conscious UFO concept, you still have these like drone beings, these small Greys, and to me it seems reminiscent of the whole like Borg concept from Star Trek, that if there's this like group intelligence, it would completely make sense why they all move off of drones, and then at that point it's like you wouldn't necessarily have to telepathically connect with the ship, because there would only be this one particular mind that's connecting all of it anyways. And not to give up like the main story for the Borg for anybody that hasn't gotten too far into Star Trek, but I keep seeing these like reoccurring sci-fi concepts, and me diving back through Star Trek, it's funny, I'm like rewatching a bunch of this stuff and I'm like, wow, this is stuff that people are currently talking about with the phenomenon. Like, again, like, is it inspired by the phenomenon, or is the phenomenon inspired by that? Because even when you start diving into some of these like UFO cults and stuff, it's like a lot of these concepts, they come back from like all these ancient writings, and they take all these different particular pieces from these ancient writings. And it's, again, like, are they stealing pieces from that, or is there really something to it? Like, it's really hard to differentiate the information sometimes, but with some of these UFO cult people, you can definitely tell that they're making shit up. But on the flip side, there are some of these ones like the one woman who discovered, I don't remember what it was exactly, but her cult basically like wouldn't let her leave the cult, was basically like the premise of it. Like, she was saying, all right, I'm not this person. And they're like, no, you are. Like, like, you get stuck in that group. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing with the cults and the personalities and stuff like that in the Star Trek, I mean, before, it's like science fiction was sort of the basis of inspiring new technologies as the technology developed. And I think now we sort of hit this technological plateau where stuff can only, where I think we've sort of hit a break where we're done inventing shit, and science fiction has become just fantasy with with LED lights instead of magic, you know, and the because like when's the last time you saw something new come from Star Trek, like the tricorder, which is the cell phone and stuff like that. That was interesting. And then the laser beams, which we now have stun guns and stuff like that.
I want the holodeck, though. If there's one thing in particular that I want from Star Trek, it's not virtual reality. It's not some helmet. I want to be able to walk into a room and be like, you know what? I want to live through the adventures of this person today and just be able to spend a day in the holodeck. Like, you know what I'd give for that technology? Like, that's what we need, man. But on the flip side, we have to have some type of a safe hatch for it, because with the way that technology goes with a lot of these weird people that are controlling it nowadays, I'd be afraid that you'd step in and never be able to step back out, but you'd think that you'd step back out, but you never did.
Yeah. Now with everything as a service, that's totally a possibility. It's like, you got to pay the exit fee, you know. If you can't afford it, well, we're going to put you to work inside the simulation.
Hey, man, if you're trying to control the population, it's really easy to control them when you have them all in single rooms by themselves. I mean,
yeah.
Especially if they think that they're out in the real world. It's like a Matrix concept, you know, except for you're not plugged in. You're in a reality that's augmenting in front of you. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. And I think now the conversation has sort of gone into, what is it, the interplanetary stuff. I think someone in the chat mentioned Earth 2. I think I remember that show. That was from Steven Spielberg, I believe.
It sounds familiar.
It was an interesting sort of terraforming thing. And then they go to this place, and it turns out that there were actually like natives there or something, but they were completely alien. And they were just building their civilization on top of like other people's civilization, allegory to colonialism type of thing. I get that.
Also kind of sounds like Star Trek too. There's which one of the movies was it when they were trying to do that giant like bomb that would terraform the planet, and they figured out there was life on the planet and they couldn't use it? It was either like the second or third Star Trek movie, like reoccurring concept.
Yeah, one of them, I'm sure.
I think it was Genesis. They were calling it Genesis or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was Star Trek 3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And then it turns out that the people that were there, they were like immortal, and it turns out that like, oh no, they're not primitive at all. They were like highly advanced. They were living primitively, and it's sort of, that was a good movie. That was a good one. But back to my original point that I guess I was trying to get at was that the sort of like chicken and egg that you were talking about what came first with like technology, is that we're not seeing our technology inspired anymore. We're seeing it just become smaller and faster. And the shows now, I think, are starting to stagnate, because now all the sci-fi shows and stuff are just action slop, like Star Trek is just pew, 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 Iron Man now.
Space exploration. Like I miss the mind-bending psychological Star Trek, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's why people gravitate to shows. I think it's like, what is it called? Expanded Universe or The Expanse or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's The Expanse.
With that like ask the question of like, well, what would interplanetary civilizations be like if they have to constantly, integrate with each other? Like people having to deal with, someone born on one planet with specific gravity, and then they go to another planet or something like, or another, interact with other people that then their gravitational tolerance is completely different.
That was like the Orville too. They brought that into consideration. Star Trek never really saw anything with that, but the Orville, they had the one chick where the weight's a lot heavier, or the gravity's a lot heavier on her planet, so she has like super strength when she's in like human gravity.
Yeah, stuff like that. And that's pretty cool. It is an interesting thought narrative, but I don't think that's anything that we'll have to deal with in our lifetimes, at least.
Hey, I'm hoping maybe. I mean, you can only be so hopeful, but maybe by the time we're old men, maybe we'll be able to like step onto something and be able to blast into space and not just do it, like Katy Perry and all them, where they think they went into space, but they didn't really go into space, and a lot of conspiracies with that. But hopefully at some point space is as we believe that it is, and it is something that's achievable that we can actually go into. Because you get onto space, dude, and there's so many different rabbit holes to go on to. Because even with the astronauts, it's like it's such a back and forth. Like you don't know which direction to go in, and it's like you'll never know because the only people that can access that are governments, which can control the information. So it's like as a general citizen, like we'll never know. And even these astronauts, they come back and they can only talk about so much. So like there's something weird to it. It's just it's so controlled by every government. It's just we'll never know until we get to a point where we can actually get to space on our own without some type of government paid for ship.
Yeah, and that gets into another thing that you like to talk about is the redefining of words. I mean, before we had like a definitive definition of what the Earth's atmosphere was and what technically was quote unquote space. And that sort of shifted. And like before we used to say like, well, the moon is outside the atmosphere and now the moon is in the atmosphere. And it's just sort of like, I guess that gets into more like culture war stuff, and often used to which gets into political implications, which I don't want to get into because that, that's used as a system of control to, and that's not what I'm debating. What I'm debating and talking about is how the words are sort of refined and weaponized against us. And you make a thing, which I really commend you for, is you archive old dictionaries and stuff like this to have the classic examples of what words actually meant, within the frame of reference that they were presented in, and how we've changed definitions and all that stuff now.
I just bought a new one the other day. It's from 1962, and it's Pocket Medical Dictionary, Vest Pocket Dictionary, Vest Pocket Thesaurus, Student Guide, Laws for Everyone, and Webster Speller. So it's funny you mentioned that. I literally just bought a new one the other day.
Exactly. It's and that's why I feel like when we talk about the stuff that happened in the 70s and the 60s regarding the abduction phenomena and the scaling of the phenomena, that it is important to preserve the history and archive this stuff. It's like, I think people talk about how libraries, it's like, well, what purpose do libraries have now? And it's like, well, libraries are important. And I think they shouldn't be called libraries anymore because we have the internet now. Maybe like I've heard the proposition that they should be started referred to as archives, because that's pretty much what they are, is archives, that they should serve an important purpose of documenting dictionaries and other educational materials, so that way we have like a proper frame of reference and stuff like this, because in case the internet goes away, which I don't think it will, but in some case, hey, you never know. It's nice to have a backup. And we're sort of pushing ourselves away from physical media out of convenience. But then it's like, well, I can't watch that episode of Parks and Recreation because it was, culturally insensitive for an obnoxious Karen here or there. So, because of that, and that's why live service, everything is sort of, it's convenient, but also it's controlling as well. And sometimes you want to watch that edgy episode of Seinfeld or something like that. But you can't do it on the live service, and you have to, look up the DVDs and all that physical media and stuff.
I mean, I don't think they're ever going to shut down the internet just because of how easy it is to control and manipulate information. And I mean, I get, like you were just kind of talking about, I've always been a big proponent for physical media because it can't be altered and it can't be changed. And bring up 2 points. One, people are starting to notice stuff on Netflix that they started removing specific parts of movies from Netflix, from Hulu, from all that stuff, just particularly in the US. Like, I know that one people were talking about was this opening cut that was talking about, like, when people become taxed, people are going to eventually rise up, blah, 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 blah. It's in the beginning of the Robin Hood movie with Russell Crowe, and they took it out of the US version on Netflix. So there's already an example of them being able to control and manipulate this media. And even on the other side of it, dude, talking about, like, non-physical versions of things, it's also just another giant cash grab because, my whole thing is I've always used Nintendo because I like, the little game cartridges. I like having physical copies. And the whole new thing that they're talking about with the new system is you're going to buy a game cartridge package just so that you can get a code. And the way that that's going to work, and I'm sure it's going to move to all of the other consoles, is that you're paying for the license to be able to use their product, meaning that you don't own their product. So you can't modify their product, meaning that Nintendo in particular was talking about if you modify one of their systems, then they have the right to be able to just shut down your system and it doesn't work anymore. So you just spent $500, $400, whatever the new system is, and they can just shut it down if you do something that they don't like with it. Like, this is the exact shit that I'm talking about with all this physical media stuff. Like, I can go and grab my Nintendo 64 and I can play any game, whatever I want, every single component of that game, and it doesn't matter how old it is as long as I can plug it into a TV. But all of these new video games, all these new movies, all of this stuff, you're never going to be able to actually physically own it because, if they don't want you to have that piece of media anymore, boom, it just disappears from your library. And like, I learned this with 360 that I lost 90% of the games that I own when I switched to Xbox One. And that was kind of when I was done with games. And now with this Nintendo thing, it's like I'm completely done with it altogether. And now with the whole thing with movies, it's like now, I was already doing it with all my favorite movies, making sure I grab physical copies of them, but I'm being even more particular about it because I've even heard that Blu-ray has been saying something about or Sony, that they're going to stop making Blu-rays and they're going to push everybody to have downloads of movies. And again, if it's digital, it's a download. If you have it as a download, unless you have it as an MP3 that you can move around on a disc, if it's on somebody's server, like all these audiobooks people buy, all this shit, they can just take it off at any time and you have no physical connection to it whatsoever. Like, the only way that I am ever going to have any digital copy of something as my main copy is if it's a version that I can put on a flash drive and disconnect. And even that, I'm not going to pay for it because it's not something that I can actually hold.
Yeah, and I could get that. And I think that's the blowback with the current Doom video game, Doom Dark Ages, how people were buying, physical copies, and that's how they marketed, or that's how the marketers were able to gauge the interest in the game. And then once word got out that it's just a code, then all those pre-sales went away because it's like, well, if I'm not getting anything, I'll just order it on Steam or whatever it is. And I do like Steam, being able to buy all that game. Like I said, it's convenient, but also it's like, I'm not going to pay full price for all of that stuff. I'll wait for a sale or something like that, because I got so many. I mean, before, like, this is just a joke, but my favorite Steam game to play is Steam, where I just wait for a sale and buy something. And because of that, I have so many backlogs of video games that I haven't even touched, and it is sad because I probably have like 180 games that I haven't played.
I've done that with my Nintendo, and half of them are corrupted, and I've uninstalled them and reinstalled them, and they still don't work. So I'm like, shit.
Yeah, but and like we said, the internet isn't going away so long as there's a bill that needs to be paid. It's not going anywhere.
I mean, one, they're making money off of it, and two, they're able to completely mentally manipulate people with algorithms. So there's just way too much of a power grab and a cash grab for the internet for it to ever shut down. It's just one of those things that everybody kind of talks about as a conspiracy, like, oh, they're going to control us by shutting down the internet. Like, that's the last thing they want, because then people are going to start talking to people outside in their community again. And that's not what they want. They want people to feel like they're isolated, be able to connect, so that they can also isolate these particular groups where, like, they're monitoring everybody over there. Like, all right, these guys are talking about some stuff, like they might rise up, and they wait for that right opportunity. And then they're like, all right, hey, have you guys ever learned how to make a bomb before? Do you guys know how to make your own ammo? Like, I might be able to help you with that. And then as soon as something's about to happen, they swoop in and act like the good guys.
Yeah, it's like that. What is it? That governor where there was a kidnapping plot, and it turns out that like 7 of the 9 people involved were CIA assets or FBI assets of some sort. And it, yeah, and I do miss the cartridges, but then of course the standard as far as game production, because there's so many moving parts now. Meanwhile, it's like I guess there's like this current conversation about how AAA has become absolute slop, and the independent studios are like making knockoffs and parodies of games that are doing gangbusters. And the thing is, people act as though, well, if the AAA, if Hollywood, if Marvel and DC, if these guys go down, then the media of whatever, then comic books and movies and video games go away. And it's like, no, it doesn't. We just go to the independent stuff. We go to the alternatives.
Which is better anyways, because people actually care about what they're doing. They're not trying to make something for everyone. They're making stuff for particular people, which is what everybody wants. They don't want something for everybody.
Yeah. And before, it was like we used to enjoy stuff being mainstream because it was then accessible to, like in the first few years of Marvel, it was mainstream. And then, people want to blame, what is it, DEI and oh, you just don't like it because we're making everyone, we're swapping out the races and stuff. We're palette swapping all the characters. And it's like, well, no, it's because the stories suck now. And all these characters that are swapped out, you're using that as a shield to avoid real criticism and stuff of this nature. And you can't even be critical because now any criticism is now marketed as, quote unquote hate speech. So it's like when you say it, it's hate speech. When we say it, it's freedom of speech and stuff like this. And it's sort of who we and them are at the moment. And right now we're seeing a bit of a shift. And a lot of people who, before used to get their way all the time, they're getting pissed off about it. And, it's sort of like, it's sort of sad because we put ourselves in that situation by allowing this stuff to happen. But now I think the biggest movement that people are doing is they're closing their wallets. And it's like, so what if Hollywood falls down? I mean, it doesn't affect me. I have all the stuff all the good movies, they come to me from like independent stuff. I'll just get it from Russia or France or something like that. I'll get, good movies from there because they have their own studios. They'll make good movies and stuff that I can enjoy, or I'll just, quote unquote, watch anime because that's what I do. I have tons of anime and stuff that I watch, and it's better than what I'm supposed to like. That I get. They make this stuff and they say it's not for you, and then when we don't watch it, they say, well, this failed because you're a bad person because you didn't watch it, you didn't support whatever it is. So it's always that, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But the thing is, it's like, I'll keep the free type of thing. But it's like, don't you want this thing? It's free. It's like, no, thanks. I'll keep the free, and that's what we're doing now. We're keeping the free.
Hold that thought. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. And now let's dive back in. See, I mean, it's one of those things with media too, where I feel like every country kind of has their own specialty, and the U.S. tried to be like, oh, we're the best at everything forever, but people are starting to realize that like the best horror comes from like, Japan, from Australia, and the best comedy for a long time came from the U.S., but we've gotten to a point where it's like we're afraid to say anything. So all of our big budget movies that everybody talked about around the world are now non-existent because, I mean, the whole joke, you go to another country and people would be reciting these one-liners from American comedies at you. That was the ongoing joke through the 90s. That's what we were known for, was our sense of humor with this type of stuff. And now that we're not doing that, it's we're not in the spotlight anymore because the torch is being taken up by everybody taking a little component of the empire and doing their own thing with it. Even horror in the US, it's people want to see brutal stuff, but it's it's gotten to a point now where it's that's all that they've done with the movies. And I keep seeing these awesome movies that come out of Australia where it's not just gore, but it has the good storyline to it too. So it's best of both worlds. It's kind of like Saw back in the day, not everybody likes the blood and gore, but some people like the, the deep psychological twisted thriller aspect of it. So it's a little bit of something for everybody. Cause it's I like the idea of that psychological horror gore fest, but if it's a movie that has no premise other than just a gore fest, it's I'm not here for that. I don't really give a shit. It has to have some type of a good storyline to it. But again, we've fallen away from that because we keep trying to make something for everybody, not realizing that not everything is for everybody. And
making it for nobody.
Yeah. So in turn, you're making it for nobody.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to bring up is that there's this large push. There's this large push by the industry under the guise of protecting their intellectual property to sort of, get rid of piracy altogether, to cripple piracy. But the thing is, if we actually look at the piracy, none of the mainstream stuff is being pirated to the extent that it actually damages their bottom line, because their stuff sucks. No one wants to pirate it. And the only stuff that is being pirated, I think they did a study on it, it's like it's manga.
Or they pirate it because they don't want to pay for it because it's crap.
Yeah, well, no, it's not even that. Not even that is happening. You think it would, but it's not happening. What's happening is people are pirating stuff that they can't get in the United States, the unlicensed stuff. Like, I'm a big guy. I love Macross. And right now I think Macross is owned by, the license has been picked up by Disney. So if I want to watch Macross, I have to go to Hulu or something like that. But this stuff, I can't get any good Macross in the United States because Harmony Gold owns the license to one of the series, and they're not allowing anything to be released. And so it's like the only alternative that I then have is piracy. And and I just want to watch anime. I just want to watch, jets transform into mechs and fight giant monsters, and it's like, I would gladly pay for it if it were presented, but that I don't have that option. And it's just, the thing is that, like I said, under the guise of protecting their intellectual property, well, Disney and like the big two, they all say, well, we got to get rid of piracy and piracy sites because, it affects our sales because people are getting our stuff for free. Yeah, that, or people are seeing, oh, let me see what this comic is. Oh, these comics are garbage. I'm not going to spend money on that, because the stuff that's good, it still sells when there's an avenue to sell it. I remember one time in the young days when I actually, not advocating piracy, but in a hypothetical, let me present where maybe I hypothetically watched a copy of The Incredibles, the movie that came out. And I loved it so much, I bought it on Blu-ray and the HD stuff so that I could have the pristine copy of it instead of the low.
Somebody in the back of the movie theater with a camera.
Yeah. So that way I could get the good movie. Yeah, good stuff. If you give people an option to buy it, they'll buy it. And I know that there are like a lot of people, they just want to control it because they just don't want people to have good alternatives. Because if people have good alternatives, then they're not going to buy our garbage. And that's pretty much what it's come down to, But aside from that, that gets into the whole, preservation of media and preservation of history, that we want good stuff to be preserved, and that's why it's important because we have, modern industry, the establishment, the whatever it is, they're trying to push garbage on us and we're rejecting it. And they're mad. It's like they're mad that we're not giving them stuff that they feel entitled to. They feel entitled to our dollars. And it's like, we would happily give you this stuff if you make it good. And I don't know. I don't know if that trickles down to every single community and stuff of that nature.
I mean, they just keep recycling the same old crap. That's what the problem is. It's like Ghostbusters, great movies, leave them alone. Evil Dead, I know Sam Raimi's involved in the new ones, but not my cup of tea. Great in the past, leave them alone. Like, all these movies that they keep trying to make sequels, remakes of, all this stuff, it's not far enough back where the technology need to be caught up. Like, when you're in the 90s and you're making a remake of something from the 70s, the video technology is a huge difference from that time. So you can make updates to that and people are all about it. But nowadays, the 90s isn't, it's the same distance about like on a timeline, but the technology itself seems like it's like a closer gap where it's like the people that like those cult classic 90s stuff, it doesn't look bad. Like, it's not like, it's cheesy a little bit, but it doesn't look bad. So it's like, I don't know what target audience that they're trying to make this stuff for, but they clearly don't know what it is. Like, prime example, the new Crow movie. The Crow is 100% a cult classic. Like, the people that love that movie are diehard about the first one, and they don't give a crap about any of the other ones that even came out in the 90s after that. So in what world does it make sense to make a remake of that? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. And continuing on with all these other storylines that just didn't need to get touched. Like, there's so much great stories that are old books that are, I don't even want to say comic books, but comic books away from the superhero stuff. Like, you know, all of the more dark side of like comic books. Like, there is so much good stuff. It's not like they've run out of ideas or there's no books they can make stuff for. It's just that they're looking in the wrong area. Like, they need to shift the focus away from just continuously thinking that you're going to keep making money off the same crap and just cycle in something new. Like, everybody loves superheroes, but when you're getting bombarded with superheroes, it's enough superheroes.
Well, it's not superheroes. It's bad superheroes. It's poorly written superheroes, which was the original point that I was getting to. And you know, and it's like we're getting stuff, but it's bad stuff. And I'm sure in the Crow movie, the new one, there was probably good stuff in there, but we missed out on it because of all the bad stuff and it being tied to something that at the time we didn't feel it needed to be tied to. If that movie was released as its own thing and the elements relating it to trying to tie it, force it to be something else were removed, and it had more of the already good stuff in it, it probably would have been a successful movie. But then I guess that's the whole thing of where, you know, the main industry has so much money tied up into everything that they're afraid to take risks, and the people who are taking risks are the independent market, and they're making good stuff, you know. But it's again because it's not, you know, it doesn't have the blessing of major industry. It doesn't check the boxes or whatever it is that they want. You know, we have to settle for the small market.
I mean, just to also clarify too, The Crow is based on a comic book, so it's not based off of the movie. I want to throw that in there because I know if I don't, somebody's going to go, "Oh, The Crow is actually a comic book." But
yeah, I met James O'Barr. He's a really cool dude. At a comic convention when I was big into comics, and it's fun. And I've read the original Crow comic book, and it is crazy. It is fucking crazy. It is way crazier than the movie. The movie was great as its own thing, and the movie was a great compartmentalized narrative that really, you know, was as close to the book as it could get.
It was the people in the atmosphere that made the movie, I think.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. You know, even though I guess it didn't do that well in the theaters, as they say, but you know, it had several sequels because there was clearly cult, you know, like iconic cult magic there that they tried numerous times to recapture. It had like 4 sequels, direct-to-video sequels.
That was one of those movies that made way more off of the VHS sales. That was because it was in the 90s, yeah. VHS sales than it actually did in the movie theaters. And that was why they made sequels, was because of the aftermarket sales, which is weird. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I think we stepped away from aliens into pop culture stuff.
I mean, it was eventually going to degrade down to it. I feel like we ended up doing that the very first time we talked because, I mean, you get two people that are into these weird subcultures of, you know, comic books and movies and all that stuff. I mean, it's going to come out at some point because when you have somebody you can talk about this stuff with, you take the opportunity.
Yeah. And I think the thing is that we got into the rabbit hole of escalation, and I think that's what the escalation of the UFO culture. And of course, we liken that to the escalation of pop culture that we're all familiar with, that everybody's talking about, you know, in the comments and in the chats and stuff of this nature, is that there is a clear escalation happening. And it's not always the best thing, but at the same time, for old people like us, we have to, you know where we came from, so that way we can be cautious about where we're going with the escalation. That we have to be able to step back and enjoy stuff and not let ourselves get rolled up in all this discourse. Because if you look at what everybody is doing out there on the live streams and on the TikToks and all this stuff, people are getting into fights. They're beating each other up. They're beating themselves up. Everybody's fat, ugly, and miserable, and it hurts. It hurts us as a culture. We're not. You know, I mean, people are hurting themselves and they're blaming everyone else for the pain that they feel. And it's very sad. And I wonder if it's, you know, this escalationist culture that is sort of, you know, we're sort of used to it so much that, you know, we use the old phrase, you know, stop and smell the flowers and stuff like this. And when people, you know, you got to disconnect, you got to touch grass. and you got to center yourself sometimes. And I think that is very important. And that's why, from a historical lens, why you got to appreciate the old stuff to know where you're going. So that way you understand what quality anything is. So that way, when you move forward, then you can appreciate it more. It's sort of like a respect for, like art history and stuff like this, learning about this stuff. And I think our current generation and stuff like this, and we're a part of it too. Where we're so used to receiving everything now that we digest it? Do we process it? Is that why we have an obesity epidemic now? Is because we're so used to consuming, like our media, that now we're consuming our food and not really tasting it. Like I struggle with, food addiction myself. I'm a fat fuck. I get it, and I struggle with that stuff. But it's the thing is that, do we take the time to really enjoy ourselves and stuff of this nature? And I think so much of us get worked up in the frenzy because we're all, you've heard the phrase keeping up with the Joneses. It used to be for like in the neighborhood. It used to be a neighborhood saying, and now it's become like a sort of a philosophy that now everyone has to keep up with each other. That FOMO, that fear of missing out. And we all know that everybody streams and their best, Instagram, whatever it is that they're presenting is fake, but we still got to keep up. We still act as if we're in direct competition with that, and we have to keep up with that. But, is it really that, and we get so worked up in the rat race and all this stuff. And it's just the same old song and dance, but it's just much faster and more accessible now.
I mean, that's kind of a thing that I fall into, I feel like a lot, is that, back in the day when you'd research something, you'd find like a piece of information and you're just like, wow, this is the piece. And you'd go around, you'd share it with everybody. But information now is moving so fast that it's like, you go on Instagram, you go on anything, and it's like, oh, here's some hidden history. Oh, here's some UFO stuff. Oh, here's some Sasquatch stuff. So it's like, even information to a certain extent is almost becoming like meaningless because there's such an abundance of it. It's, again, stopping and smelling the roses. Like, it's hard to appreciate one new thing you've learned when you're being bombarded by new things. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to learn new things. I absolutely love learning new things. But I wonder what my capacity would have been 20 years ago versus now, where it's like, I feel like I'm learning so much because I'm taking so much stuff in, but it's like, how much am I actually retaining? Because it's not like I'm just taking in this piece of information and sitting with it for the day and really letting it soak in anymore, That's why it's like, you'll completely forget about something, and then you'll be on a podcast having a conversation, somebody will bring something up, and then it's like a file cabinet in the back of your mind that it's like, oh yeah, here's a piece of that. But it's like, we've gotten to the point now where it's like, it's not as organized of a file cabinet as it used to be, where it's like, here's the time, here's the date, here's the this, here's the that. It's more like just a short-handed version of it. And I've noticed that that's like how my brain works a lot of the time, is that it's like, I have a lot of information. I'm a jack of all trades on a lot of stuff, but it's like, my brain will make it into the shortest piece of information possible. So it's like, instead of having all the dates and times for this specific event, I have 100 different events, but here's the punchline to it, Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than the price of a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts or premium video versions of the show, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits and 7-day free trials available. Now let's get back into it.
I guess that would probably be a time to, I want to say wrap up, but before we wrap up, I want to show off some of my artwork and stuff that I've been working on for the compendium. If
absolutely
would be okay with that.
Yeah, and you got to do words of wisdom too before we wrap up and do links too, because I can't let you leave without doing some words of wisdom, my friend.
I hate those.
That's why I got to trap you.
You're such a bum. Okay, this is for people on listening to the audio. Check out the YouTube when you get a chance. But I put up a picture of one of the creatures that I drew for the compendium that I'm working on. And it's like a lizard-like creature in armor and body armor. And he's sort of like, all scaly. And he's got like these ears that are like fins and stuff like this. A very dragonic type of creature in space armor, and this is like one of the races that I've done, and it's the Arkeith Andrews. He's sort of like one of those galactic ambassador types. He does this stuff, and doing the compendium. I've always wanted to do a monster manual, like Dungeons and Dragons type of stuff, to contribute art to one of those, to do one of those. And with this sort of, I get that this scratches that itch, and I get to draw these creatures and these monsters and stuff like this, and present them as best I can in the context of this compendium, and I'm very blessed and honored to be a part of it. And it also helps out because one of my biggest criticisms on working with compendiums and stuff of that nature is there are a lot of races of the world books out there that categorize the alien races and give you all the information and all the download on them. But with a lot of them, a lot of the artwork, it seems to be like an afterthought, where it's not universal. With this Arkeith, he wanted to make all the drawings uniform as best as he could.
My OCD likes stuff like that.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff from the other compendiums, it's either stuff that's been floating around for a while, it's nothing new, or it's production stills from movies and TV shows where it kind of looks like this but not really, type of thing. It's like an approximation. And with this, we're sort of like trying to do that, sort of get everything as close to as I can, based on what the aliens are supposed to look like, and run off of that. Let me see if I can. I'll probably do this one. It's all these different kinds of races. I'll just cycle through these, and then we'll. Oh, that's a political thing. Stephen Greer versus Lou Elizondo.
Well, it's kind of fitting with the conversation today. So
here's a little spider person. Here's a sort of a predator-like creature, very muscular and powerful. And there's like a alien veins and stuff like that. These are like vines, and they have a person in them, and it's just so interesting. And I'm just showing off just the diversity of creatures that people are claiming to have experienced out there. And this one is sort of a short investigator sketch, because every now and then I'll do investigator sketches where I'll like try to touch up one of their drawings and get information from them on how to, spruce it up a bit, like just take over from what they have seen, what their witness has detailed to them. They'll give me an approximation and say, "Hey, Chris, can you touch this up? Can you?" And then I'll take care of that. I got to turn this into a T-shirt. One of our historic people, J. Allen Hynek, and he's like one of the progenitors of the UFO culture as well. And he's like a fantastic, a well-researched, well-respected individual who really looked into this. So I sort of did like a beefcake thing with him. And here we have the Bigfoot doing a spider crawl where he's like all elbows and stuff.
Dude, I've seen a few people reshare this actually too. I've seen that one actually floating around the community a bit.
Yeah, here's the little goblins. I like drawing goblins every now and then. And oh, look, that's familiar.
I was going to say, this artwork looks super familiar.
There's another one. That's the base drawing that was used for one of the T-shirts.
And the logo, actually.
Yeah. And here's this was from my personal experience where I experienced sleep paralysis demons, but my sleep paralysis demons were white trash. It was hilarious. I'm sure I've shared this story on your show.
I think you shared it the first time you were on, but we can always do a touch up on that one because it's been a long time since you've been on, and the audio quality's improved a lot since the original time you've been on the show.
If people are interested, let Shayn know, and I'll be sure to mention it the next time I come in. And this is one of the watchers, the shadowish type of people who watch over us. And let me just, that's Purtis from Record of Lodos War. I love Record of Lodos War. Okay, and here's like a sort of like a lot of people describe ants like people, and I sort of took a stab at like, well, what would an ant-like entity look like? And this was interesting because I had to do a lot of research on ants and their how their hands look and all this stuff to get it to best illustrate it to present it to the reader. And then here we have one that's sort of a T-Rex like creature, except this guy actually has 4 arms. And here we have one. This one I think it looks a lot like the Fallout monsters. And you'll see a lot of crossover from popular culture into what these aliens are. And here we have foxes causing mischief. And this was from like a friend who commissioned. And it will cycle back to the dog man, the sort of space dog man in his space suit. And I guess we'll just leave it there for right now. I think is that a lot of these creatures, like we'll see like this stuff, and then we'll see a lot of like recycled content where someone will get an idea for something and then it'll wind up in pop culture, and we see that done with like the alien races all the time, where all of the what is it, the how many times have we seen it's like the gray rehashed in one way or another, and then we'll see like the mantis beings, and everyone describes their mantis-like, but not exactly mantises. And in some interpretations, they just go full-on mantis. Yeah, so it's an interesting stuff. I'm very skeptical myself of these appearances and what is actually going on, but because of that, I'm still interested in the phenomenon, and a lot of it for me has become at this point is I'm just taking in lore. I just see it as these are lore. I want to learn about these creatures. I want to learn about their culture. What it is that they're all about as characters. So that's why I have no problem talking to experiences and stuff, because I want to learn. I want to learn, like, what is your experience with these entities? What did they tell you? Because everything we learn about them has been secondhand from the experiencers. And, and what is this phenomenon really? Is it always something that was ancient, that was always here, and we're interacting it, and it's lying to us, telling us, oh, they need to believe that we're from outer space because that's what they're into. So we'll tell them we're from Mars. Yeah, that's it. We're from Mars. And then like, oh, they know Mars is it habitable? Oh, crap. We're from these stars. Yeah, that's it. That's a ticket. We're from these stars. Yeah. And it's like, man, they figured that out. They figured out that interstellar travel without time travel is highly improbable and infeasible. Dang it. Okay. We're from the next dimension over. Yeah, that's right.
You got to keep dangling the carrot. It's always just in front of you.
And it would be fun if it turns out that they were from another dimension the entire time and they just didn't know how to explain it to us because let's be honest, we weren't listening.
I mean, it could be a lot more complex of an idea that we think, that these other dimensions could be other corners of space, even though they're like almost like repeating aspects of space. So, I mean, the whole wormhole concept definitely seems like it could definitely be extremely plausible, and it also could be explaining like other dimensions or what we're perceiving as other dimensions, and it may not be necessarily as we think it is, but rather like another location within the same reality, for example. Like, I feel like it's one of those things we can just kind of sit here and keep throwing theories, but until we're actually at the point where we can put this into practice, it's all, educated guesses and theories.
Yeah, with time travel and the interdimensional question, I think Marvel, I'm just bitching here. I think Marvel did a disservice by introducing the multi-dimensional stuff the way that it did, because it did so as a means of covering up its poor writing. It's like, oh, we've written out this character. Oh, we need to recast them, or we need to get this character back because they ended up being popular. Oh, well, it's a interdimensional palette swap.
Or I want to make another version of this character.
Yeah, they simplified it to the point that I think it's not feasible as the means that they express it. And I don't know how to best express it, but that's just what I'm settling with. And I think it's a good starting point. But I do feel like it could have been done better, because with time travel, just time travel alone, let's say we have time travel within one uniform dimension. Well, there are so many variables that some people think, oh, this one critical decision of mine split these dimensions in two. Well, everyone everywhere is making all these same decisions and these same variables. So that like infinitely blossoms the possibilities out there. So it's like it turns everything into a colluded mess. So it's like, oh, no wonder we have to have quantum computers figure this stuff out because it's so complicated. I mean, it's not just you making the decision, but it's every single individual making the decision. It's every single grain of sand, through circumstance, am I going to roll to the right or am I going to roll to the left? As if as if through some novelty attributing a sentience to sand grains. It's so overly complicated. And I think that we have such a simplified view of it that I don't know. It makes me go humbug. So it's so hard.
I think it's one of those things that, like, there's some people that are starting to kind of break the cusp, but I think it's one of those things that our brains have to develop more to get to a point to fully understand this. And we're like aware that it's a concept, but we're not at the point yet where we can mentally fathom it. Because, I mean, even looking at like how our technology works now, and you go back to somebody like 100 years ago, like their brain doesn't work in the same mindset of how to get to that point of how that makes sense and how that functions. Like we just need to get to a further point, and then I think that it'll become something that we generally can all understand, but we're not even near that point yet. And that's where the whole thing where, a lot of these species come and they say that, we need to rise to a higher vibration. We need to rise in frequency, all of this type of different stuff. We need to become more educated, more knowledgeable. Like they're telling us, like, you guys are getting there. You guys are almost there, but you guys need to develop a little bit more before you can understand what we're really trying to put down here. It's like us trying to have a conversation with an ant. It's like your brain needs to develop more. There's only so much I can do here for you, bud.
Yeah. And of course, the ant is looking up at this and saying, wait, why the hell are you paying bills? Water and air is free. And it's like, where are the idiots?
And then it goes out to a macro scale where that these extraterrestrials, these advanced beings, all of them they're not living in the same rat race. So they're looking down at it like, all right, they're mid-range because you evolve again past that point.
Yeah, it's like, what, you guys subscribe to Netflix? You just can't imagine this? You have imaginations. What the hell?
Why don't you guys just tell each other stories in each other's heads telepathically? Why would you want to sit down and watch something when you can just put the whole thing in somebody's head?
Why do you have to pay like $12.99 a month for just the lowest common denominator? It seems every single level, someone's going to be like having something to laugh at something else.
Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and you think I deserve it, then please leave a review or rating for this show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you happen to use. Your continued support is what makes the show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it.
I actually do think I have finally some words of wisdom that I think is if you love something, preserve it. If you and I think that's definitely important because you preserve words, you archive stuff because it's important to you, and take time, slow down every now and then. Don't get caught up in the rat race. Don't get caught up in everybody's whatever it is, whatever the latest trending thing. It'll still be there when you get back. It seems like we're moving at a breakneck pace to keep up with everything. And yeah, everything's coming at us from all directions, all at once over everything. But, every now and then, you slow down, as much as I'm trying to say it without being smug about it or cynical, yet touch grass. That's sort of the sentiment of it is, slow down a little bit and take time to enjoy things, actually connect with real people, talk to them, and get, because the real friends, they'll always be there for you. You quickly learn who your real friends are when tribulation shows its head. And it's, being a part of so many communities, and within these communities, and even though all those spheres don't always connect, it's good to be there. It's good to enjoy this stuff. Yeah, we can't always talk about the same dumb stuff on every single show that we enjoy, but there is a community out there, and be a part of it. Is everything going to go swimmingly? No, but you can persevere through it. That's the thing. Preserve and persevere. That's what those are my words of wisdom, my 2 words: preserve and persevere.
Well, I like that. That's something that not too many people end up saying on the show. So you were worried about dropping some words of wisdom, and you ended up dropping something great. So something original, too. So again, thank you for that, man. I completely agree with it. And before I let you get out here completely, man, I have to let everybody know where they can find your podcast, where people might be able to commission you for artwork or any other projects that you're doing, including where people might be able to find information on this book as more information gets given for the book.
Yeah, sure thing. I'll release details right now. I'm going to be kind of reluctant on the ground that I want to give the author time to catch up, because he's like doing a lot of stuff, and I'm working on the 2nd volume. So if you need like a little bit, it's Races of the World, the unillustrated edition and it's from R. Keith Andrews. He's an experiencer. If the best outlet to look for him would be either through his own, search R. Keith Andrews on YouTube or go to SOR. He'll do like a monthly segment on there with Dave Scott, and that would be the best place to approach him. But if you're going to approach him, it will probably be best to go through Dave Scott first, because that's how I sort of approached him, because he revealed on Dave Scott's show that, like, I think it was 3 years ago, that he was looking for an artist, and that's when I reached out to him and put my hat in the ring. I thought that I would be part of a team of rotating artists, like a team of 4. And it turns out after talking to us, he hired me to be his primary artist. So I'm pretty much the guy doing, pretty much all, like 90% of the art in the book. And in the first volume, I've done I want to say 60 or 70 illustrations. It feels like 100, but I've done like 70 to 60 illustrations for the first volume. And the 2nd volume has begun production as far as the artwork goes. You can find me if you want to reach out for artwork and stuff like this. I'm definitely open. You can find me at Instagram and Twitter at Conspire a Theory, all one word, Conspire a Theory. You can also find me on YouTube. Just search up Conspire a Theory podcast. You'll be able to find the channel easily. It should be able to at Conspire a Theory on the YouTubes as well. And I have a Rumble channel, also the same, which I try to update as best as I can. And it's follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. You can reach out to me through those outlets, and I'd be happy to, if you have a podcast that, other podcasters, if you would like for me to come on your show and discuss some of these topics, I'd be happy to. And if people want to come on my show and discuss these topics with me, I'm definitely welcome to having people on. I've slowed down a bit so that way I could take time to work on the books, because I have like a backlog of commissioned artwork that I have to get used to and get done, and a bunch of other personal projects that I want to get in the bin. So it's like I'm sporadically releasing podcast episodes, but the door is still open, so it's just things happen, people. and that's just the best outlet to reach me. Conspire Theory on Twitter and Instagram, and also YouTube.
Well, man, as always, I appreciate you making the time to come on. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, man, catching back up, and looking forward to the next time, because hopefully we can make it sooner rather than later, because hopefully we won't end up going another year and a half before doing another show, because that's a bit ridiculous, man, considering we talk all the time on social media.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love coming on the show. I love the show. I love what you're doing with it. Actually, I do have some criticisms. Would you mind if I gave you some feedback?
Absolutely.
I think sometimes you'll do this thing where you'll start up a community, like either a Discord or something, and then I think you got to let stuff grow sometimes. You plant so many seeds, and I think you got to allow stuff time to grow, because I love the Discord community, and then I think you took it down. Is that right?
Yeah, I took that one down because I felt like nobody was really doing nothing in it. And I know that I'm not always on social media super duper regularly. So I've been thinking about starting up a new community. I've just been kind of putting the feelers out to see if anybody would be interested. But, I feel bad when people end up joining the community and there's just not much going on in it.
Yeah, because I made so many contacts through it. And you sort of, took it down. And I'm like, oh, you took that. Because I was making legit contacts through your community. Yeah, and I guess that's just the one thing that I'll nitpick for you is let stuff grow. Just let stuff there, especially if it doesn't cost you anything. And I understand the cost is time because you have to monitor it, but the community is there too. You have like a lot of people like me in there. If I see spam in there, I'll definitely report it and tag it. You gotta like let stuff grow and also allow your community to thrive. I guess that's the criticism that I guess I'll throw at you.
I was gonna say I felt like I kind of had like a few regular people that are always talking, and I kind of threw the two communities out that I kind of set up for them. But like I said, on the flip side, I have been thinking about starting something back up. So if I start up a Discord or a Telegram again, I'll definitely make sure that I let you know first, and I'll put the feelers out to figure out what people are more into. Because I think originally when I shut down the Discord, I was switching over to Telegram thinking that it'd be more user friendly, and then once I switched over to that, I didn't get all the same people from the Discord that joined over, so then it was kind of like, all right, I already nuked the other one, so I just nuked that one. But I don't know, maybe I'll open back up the Discord. It seems like there was more people that were bouncing in on the Discord than the Telegram, and it seems like people have kind of been straying away from Telegram lately.
Yeah. I whatever works best for you. It's your show, but I'm just letting you know what I liked, what I enjoyed, and I hope that you encourage that.
Absolutely. Actually, that was part of the survey that I have out that I've been trying to get a feedback on everybody was whether or not I should start back up a community. So I'm glad that even without you having to fill out the survey, you ended up answering one of the main questions I was trying to get answered for that survey. So
yeah.
Say people are starting to pop into the live chat, so at least I got some spot for people to bounce back into. But I'll try to find a special place that you guys can all chat besides on the live shows.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for all that you do, Shayn. And I appreciate you so much.
Same here, man. I'll always appreciate you. I appreciate all the help that you do with all the artwork and everything. And it's been nice knowing you, man, this whole time that we've been running the podcast. And I'm glad that we've remained friends this whole time, man. If you guys enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you guys is exactly how the show grows. So anything you guys do to help the show grow, I greatly appreciate. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that I'm the most active on. Or you guys can get a hold of me through the submission forum, which is available at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is through the hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And you guys can text or call that, whatever is easier for you guys. And whatever means to get a hold of me, just don't forget to get a hold of me, because I would absolutely love to hear from you guys. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, I Know Squatch, Snarl Natural Products, Crypto Theology, and Big Ape Threads. And our friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Sticker Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those is available down in the show notes. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is also available down in the show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities,